Hi guys, did you miss me? Today I'm going to serve you a special, Chanel special. So welcome to Random Talks with Ira. Once in a while I'll present to you a deep dive into one topic, and we are starting with the Chanel brand. Chanel has become synonymous with luxury, high value, femininity. Even the people who've never worn the brand understand what it represents: class, wellness, timelessness, and elegance. The interlocking C logo is one of the most instantly recognizable symbols in fashion. So I'm trying to remember the first time I've actually heard about the brand, and I think it was through The Devil Wears Prada with that iconic Chanel boots moment.
Are you wearing the
Chanel boots? Yeah, I am.
This film actually planted the idea of becoming a journalist in my brain, and well, look what I'm doing now. In some way, I kinda did achieve that. Anyway, Chanel got huge pop culture exposure. We've got mentions in Sex and the City, and if you remember the show, Bonnie McDougal was infamous for being an insufferable lady and for wearing Chanel. That's actually the mother of Charlotte's first husband. Also, I feel like Charlotte and Natasha, its big second wife, kinda align with Chanel aesthetic and vibe in some way. But what's interesting, the girl we actually see wearing Chanel is Samantha. She got lots of outfits with something Chanel through the show. I feel like she was into Chanel earrings specifically, and I'd love to cover this show, maybe the next special, because there is no way I could fit everything I want to say about this show into 10 minutes on my regular episodes. Then there is Gossip Girl with Blair Waldorf, who's basically, I don't know, like a Chanel mood board. We often see her in Chanel suits and with Chanel bags. I guess she also into Chanel makeup. But you know what always confused me? Blair's obsession with Breakfast at Tiffany's. I don't really get why would she be obsessed with a movie about two immature, delusional sex workers. Yes, Audrey Hepburn is gorgeous, but like, why? It doesn't seem like this story is something that Blair would have necessarily love, you know? And what I do understand is why producers originally wanted Marilyn Monroe for the role instead of Audrey Hepburn. Marilyn would have made the escort aspect of the role more literal, while Audrey brought a more subtle, fairy tale-like vibe with a romantic tone. By the way, Marilyn and Audrey were associated with Chanel. Anyway, the brand is everywhere in pop culture. Clueless gave us this famous Chanel-inspired plaid outfit. There are also references to the brand in The Crown, Emily in Paris, OC, Scream Queens, the September issue, The Great Gatsby, and so many others. Wanna know real-life girls associated with Chanel? Well, I have a list. We've got Princess Diana, Jacqueline Kennedy, Jane Fonda, and Romy Schneider. And in our lifetime, we've got Jennie from Blackpink, the internet's human Chanel, who may be honestly the strongest brand's ambassador. I mean, she literally shifts the conversation around the brand every time she posts. Also, remember that iconic Chanel's number 5 ad with Nicole Kidman in New York City? It was so beautiful. I love the vibes, the details, the visuals. Though it does feel like a man's fantasy of a woman. Then we have Lily Rose Depp. Sometimes her outfits are a hit, sometimes a miss, but overall she's mostly great with her Chanel looks. We also have Margot Robbie. I mean, she's fine with her Chanel looks. I wouldn't say that I'm like obsessed, but they work together. I mean, it's a nice match. Penelope Cruz, on the other hand, well, that's the case where ambassador and the brand aren't really working together. I mean, every Chanel outfit that she throws on washes her out. This isn't okay. I found only one outfit where she's wearing Chanel and she is actually as stunning as she is. I feel like Chanel just needs to change like the rotation of clothes that they give her, and it makes the brand look worse. Like, work on yourself. Do your homework. Kristen Stewart, well, on paper, must work. But in reality, it doesn't. I mean, well, it really doesn't. It looks... She doesn't click with Chanel, but maybe it's Chanel problem again. Maybe Chanel needs to work on their side. Blake Lively. I've included her because I knew that she was friends with Karl Lagerfeld, but I don't want to talk about Blake Lively. Also, I don't have like any strong images in my head with her and Chanel, so let's just skip Blake. Willow Smith. Again, gorgeous woman, but she kind of looks looks strange in her Chanel outfits. I don't know. Maybe it's just like not her aesthetic. It doesn't feel like it's clicking to me, at least. Keira Knightley. I don't know. I don't really have lots to say about it. To me, her outfits with Chanel are kind of just boring. Honestly, so many more, but I'm just naming the ones who are strongly known for wearing the brand. I personally love pieces that Madeleine White finds. And let me say this. Pearl chokers and belly flats. Thank you, Chanel. Also, like their bags, I feel like it's another topic, but every girl I know has a little soft spot for Chanel bag. I love Chanel bags, like they are so cute to me. I don't think I could cover every pop culture moment. Chanel has been around for over a century. What's beneath the elegance? And trust me when I'll tell you the full story of Coco Chanel herself, the business, the lovers, the legacy, you're going to be surprised. So I wanna deep dive into Coco Chanel herself. You guys, she's no ordinary woman. And not only because she built the brand, honestly, this whole special could be dedicated only to her and I still wouldn't cover everything, especially the list of her lovers. A little spoiler. Coco Chanel was born on August 19, 1883, in France. Her birth name was Gabrielle Benhur Chanel. She was the second of 5 or maybe even 6 children. Some sources say there were 6 children and one of them died very young. Now I need to mention that this woman was extra closed about her background and almost had no public connection to her family, romanticizing her upbringing and childhood. She often altered the truth to create a mysterious vibe around herself, probably being ashamed of her parents and siblings. You have to understand she was creating a lifestyle and image for her brand and her childhood didn't fit the picture. Also, now knowing her story, I do see how broken and deeply traumatized she was. She lived with her family in Aubazine and other small towns in central France. The family moved often due to her father's unstable work situation. Her early years were marked by deep poverty and instability. Her mother, Eugenie Jean Devol, was a laundrywoman, and her father, Albert Chanel, was a street traveling vendor who sold clothing and workwear. The family lived in modest, often temporary lodgings, sometimes with relatives or even in basic shelters. It's likely the older children were expected to work or help from a very young age. They relied on charity and religious institutions. That's why I always say children should be a choice and contraception is necessity. When Coco was 11 or 12, her mother died of tuberculosis and her father abandoned all the children. After that, the siblings were split up. Gabrielle, aka Coco, and her older sister Julia Brett were sent to Aubazine orphanage. The boys were sent to a work farm, and youngest sister Antoinette may have been sent to live with relatives or also to the orphanage. Unfortunately, I don't know exactly what happened to her. Again, Coco lied a lot about this part of her life, claiming her father sailed to America and sent her to boarding school. So she also may have lied about her younger sister being sent to live with distant relatives, because that's the only siblings she had any meaningful connection later in her life. Julia, her older sister, had a tragic life, living in poverty and eventually dying under difficult circumstances, while probably ending her own life. Coco did not reconnect with her as with all other siblings. Some reports suggest she may have helped her brothers financially, but there is no known record of meaningful reconnections. Like, there were no letters found, nothing basically. You may wonder how this girl managed to get anything done with her life with such a background. And I'll tell you, after leaving the orphanage at 18, Chanel lived in a boarding school in Moulins, where she worked as seamstress by day and sang in cafe and cabaret at night to earn extra money. By the way, that's where her younger sister Antoinette reappeared again. So it's speculated that they were performing together. Coco learned to sing informally and wasn't classically trained, but she had stage charm and presence. Her stage name Coco likely came from a song that she sang or from a nickname given by soldiers and admirers, and that's when she changed her first name to the famous Coco we all know. During this performance era, she met the person who made a huge difference in her life, Etienne Balsan, her wealthy lover. This moment and the strong shift in her life are nicely shown in the film Coco Before Chanel. Through him, she entered the world of French elites. He introduced her to polo players authors, fashion-forward women, and socialites. He also financially helped her set up her first business making hats. Basically, she started making hats for his friends in his house. Her first shop opened in Paris in 1910 and was financed by her other lover, Arthur Boy Capel. Actually, it was Etienne who introduced them. And if you wonder, Boy, it's like a nickname that they were calling Arthur. Around this time, her older sister died and Chanel took care of her child. She was always closed about her family, so I don't know for sure how she even found the boy, and she wasn't public about him, which sparked a lot of theories. For example, one of them is that her nephew is actually her biological son that she had with Arthur Boy Capel. But we don't know, and I honestly do believe that he's her nephew, but you can believe whatever you want. Essentially, we know that she sent her nephew to an English boarding school using Arthur's connection and supported the nephew financially with Arthur's money because she wasn't rich yet. But her hats became popular with actresses and upper-class women. Her shift into clothing came shortly after, and almost by accident. While spending time in Deauville, it's a seaside resort, during World War I, Chanel found traditional women's fashion impractical. Corsets, petticoats, and heavy fabric didn't work in daily life or on the beach. She started making her own clothes from jersey fabric, which was cheap, scratchy, and used mostly for men's underwear at the time. It's her thing, yes. In 1915, she opened a fashion house in Biarritz, a neutral zone during the war that attracted wealthy European clients, especially Spanish aristocrats. By 1917, I think, she actually gave Arthur all of the money that she borrowed. Chanel started designing relaxed, simple clothing using jersey, which made her revolutionary. The war shifted women's role, many entered the workforce and needed practical, comfortable clothing, which Chanel offered. I want to say a few words about the lover Arthur Boy Capel before we get to the mess. So Chanel and Capel met around 1909-1910 and had passionate, intense relationship for nearly a decade. He never married her despite their closeness. He actually married an English aristocrat in 1918, which devastated Chanel. Still, they remained close and probably romantically involved, even after his marriage. But he died shortly after, on December 22nd, 1919, in a car accident in France. Many say he was the love of her life, he supported her work and creativity, and I don't really know the reasons they never got married. It could have been her fear of commitment, or most probably it was his need of money and social status. And you guys, the list of people she dated is actually crazy. And yes, that's where we get into a mess. So I've already told you about the two first known lovers. Then she dated Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich Romanov, who actually introduced her to the perfumer who created Chanel No. 5, the scent that made her globally known. The years between wars were actually the peak of her career. This is when she became a global icon. By 1930s, she was considered one of the most influential designers in the world. But let's go back to dating. After Romanov, she was with many different lovers, but I want to emphasize the ones who actually made a real impact. So we have the second Duke of Westminster, one of the richest men in Europe at the time, British aristocrat, land owner, deeply conservative, and friend of Winston Churchill. I'll mention him again shortly. It's also said that she started taking morphine in the 30s. One theory is that another lover of hers died in her arms during a tennis match, and that, combined with earlier deaths of Arthur's Boy Capel and the looming war, broke her emotionally. A friend supposedly suggested morphine to help her cope, and she reportedly used it daily until the end of her life. And now I'm opening Pandora's box. Her next lover was Hans Günther von Dinklage. I don't know if I say this name right. They dated during World War II, and he was a German intelligence officer and Nazi spy. She lived at the Ritz with him during Nazi occupation of Paris. He helped protect her during the war. Chanel shut down her couture operations in 1939. Most French fashion houses did the same or scaled back, but she closed completely and fired her workers. According to declassified French documents, she worked as a Nazi agent under the codename Westminster. a nod to her affair with the Duke of Westminster. In 1943, she even traveled to Madrid on a mission meant to negotiate a peace between Germany and the Allies, orchestrated by her Nazi connections. Her involvement in World War II is something I had honestly never heard before, which is kind of crazy. I do understand why it's not like globally shared information, because it doesn't add to the brand lore. You know, our designer once was a Nazi spy, supposedly, like, haha, so nice. No, it's not nice. But it's actually interesting. Some sources suggest she made connections with the Nazis out of fear, that it was only about survival, but we'll never know for sure. Was it genuine belief in the ideology, pure fear, or loyalty to her lover? And it gets even more shocking when we bring in the story about her perfume partners, the Wertheimer brothers. When the perfume was initially created, it was just a luxurious gift to her couture clients and sold in one of her boutiques. But Chanel didn't have the infrastructure or business knowledge to manufacture and distribute it globally. Through a connection of Théophile Bader, the founder of Galeries Lafayette, she partnered with the Wertheimer brothers. The ownership structure was simple: Pierre Wertheimer 70%, Théophile Bader 20%, Coco Chanel just 10%. She gave them her name, her formula, and her brand, and in return she got a minority share. So yeah, it really does seem like they did her dirty. She filed lawsuits and tried to renegotiate her cut, but the Wertheimers held firm. They had legal rights and all the leverage. Then, during the war, things took a much darker turn. France fell under Nazi occupation, and the Wertheimers, being Jewish, fled to the United States. Chanel stayed in Paris, as we know. She lived at the Hotel Ritz, in the same building that housed high-ranking Nazi officers. And here's where she crossed a serious line. She attempted to Aryanize Parfum Chanel. I'm going to read this if you don't mind. Under Nazi law, non-Jews are allowed to take control of Jewish-owned businesses. Chanel petitioned the German authorities to claim full ownership of the fragrance company, stating that she was of Aryan descent and therefore entitled to seize control. What she didn't know, the Wertheimers had already outsmarted her. For fleeing, they secretly transferred the ownership of Parfum Chanel to a Christian French businessman, not Théophile Bader, someone else. He held the company during the war and returned it to them after liberation. I'll get deeper into the business side of Chanel later, because this isn't the last time you'll hear about the Wertheimers. But for now, let's get back to the personal story and the brand's unexpected second birth. After the war, Chanel was arrested and interrogated by French authorities, but she was released without charges, possibly due to Winston Churchill's quiet intervention. He was close friends with the Duke of Westminster, yes, again, the powerful lover that I mentioned so many times today. Her reputation in France was wrecked. So she left. She moved to Switzerland. She actually claims that she didn't feel safe in France. She moved to Switzerland for almost a decade in self-imposed exile. She lived at luxurious Hotel Beau Rivage. She survived off royalties from Parfum Chanel, which ironically had ruined thanks to Wertheimers. It's actually speculated that she was addicted to morphine by then, and she made custom clothes for her pharmacist wife to get access to medication. At this point, she was extra rich. I mean, how many people do you know that can casually stop working for 15 years and keep having quiet but luxurious life? But she wasn't satisfied. She was bitter, angry, and in many ways left behind. What made it even worse? Well, Dior. Christian's Dior new look was everywhere. Nipped waist, full skirts, structured silhouettes, ultra-feminine, ultra-romantic. Chanel hated it. To her, it was everything she fought against: restriction, discomfort, the male fantasy of a woman. I'll give you one of her quotes in a second, but well, she actually was homophobic and she did hate Dior, like, no doubt. The words she said about him are so brutal. I'm not going to include that homophobic quote, but she reportedly said, "Dior doesn't dress women, he upholsters them." By the way, while we're on the topic of fashion feuds, I don't really believe in a huge rivalry between her and Elsa Schiaparelli. They were different for sure, but they seem to share some beliefs, especially around pushing fashion forward. Still, the feud was likely more one-sided. Chanel looked down on Schiaparelli, who was more avant-garde and focused on surrealistic designs. And you guys, what do you think about Schiaparelli special? Definitely not the next episode, but sometimes down the line, because this woman and that brand are fascinating. So much to unpack, and I don't know if any brand can be called pure art in fashion. to me is Schiaparelli. Back to Chanel. In 1954, at age 71, she made a wild move. She reopened her fashion house. Everyone was stunned. Her comeback collection, well, it was a flop in France. The media and public hadn't forgotten the Nazi ties, but in the US and UK, it was a completely different story. They loved her style. Clean lines, soft tailoring, no corsets, wearable elegance. It was clear, rebellious counterpoint to Dior's grandeur. Slowly, Chanel rebuilt her empire, and she did it with pieces that are still iconic today. She refused to follow trends. She designed for real women, the modern women, not a fantasy. Hollywood and high society embraced her. Jackie Kennedy, Grace Kelly, Elizabeth Taylor, they all wore Chanel. Chanel became extremely rich. She owned 3 mansions by the end of her life. She was one of the richest women in the world. She was in high elite circles, she was admired, but she was still lonely. Her last words were to her maid Celine, and they were, "This is how one dies, alone." Coco Chanel died on January 10th, 1971, at age 87, in her suite at the Ritz Hotel, where she lived for over 30 years. It's widely reported that she would pay Ritz waiters to dine with her so she wouldn't have to eat alone. She actually chose to live at this hotel. It wasn't out of necessity. Maybe it was sentimental, maybe it was about avoiding loneliness. We don't know. Even in her final years, she was known for being controlling, solitary, and obsessed with every detail of her brand. As I've said, she took morphine daily, but her inner circle described her as sharp, cynical, difficult, and completely present. Remember the nephew I've told you about earlier? Well, he inherited her vows, but it's still unclear where he was when she passed away. And that's the story of Gabrielle, the girl who became Coco Chanel. Honestly, I find it so deeply sad. From her childhood to her isolated death, yes, she was powerful, yes, she shaped fashion forever. She was the first person who designed pants for women and made it high fashion, but I don't know, there is drama here. Like, investigating her, I physically felt it. I admire her vision, her work dedication, her strengths. She did change the world forever. She, being absolutely no one, became the global icon. But the Nazi chapter, the loneliness, the control issues, morphine use, it's just so much. And she doesn't seem like someone you would want to be around, you know? I'm so sorry, my cat is screaming. And how on brand for Chanel episode is he? I honestly always associated his coloring with a cow, but honestly, he can be both. He can be Chanel cat and a cow cat. So at the end of the day, she did change the fashion. She actually changed the world. She gave women freedom, but as a human being, as Gabrielle, she seems like someone who never found peace or happiness. Let me know in the comments how you feel about her, because I'm still not sure. I don't want to pity her because, well, I just don't want to. You know, it doesn't feel like I should pity her. But her story actually seems sad to me. Let's move on into the business part of the Chanel empire, because if Coco was the face and the soul of the brand, the money, the infrastructure, and ultimately the power belonged to someone else, and that hasn't changed since. So remember when the perfume was initially created, it was just a luxurious gift to her clients, like something beautiful, something extra. Then she partnered with the Wertheimer brothers for her perfume business. They had manufacturing, business knowledge, connections, they knew PR, and they were promoting the perfume brand as well as the clothes, because both were under the same name. No one knew what's the difference. Both were named Chanel, like Chanel clothes, only she was getting money from, and Chanel perfume that she was getting only 10%. To people, it seemed like the same brand. No one actually knew the difference, so when the brothers were promoting the perfumes, they were promoting her clothes as well. This way, the thing that Coco once created in a partnership with a perfumer was constantly growing with the help of the Wertheimer brothers. And even though before the war they weren't promoting the clothes, the brand's visibility and general knowledge grew. So it wasn't just her comeback in 1954, it was a merger, fragrance and fashion under Wertheimer's control. She got a huge check and a coverage for all her living expenses. She became one of the richest women in the world and reopened her fashion house. The whole reopening was financed by the brothers. They paid for the return of the ateliers, the show, the fabrics, the PR. In return, they gained increasing control over her fashion business too. Coco went back to doing what she did best, designing, and the Verheimers kept growing the empire around her. By the time she died in 1971, they owned it all. Fashion, accessories, perfumes, bags, licensing, global operations, everything Chanel was Verheimer. Today, the brand is still 100% owned by the Verheimer family, specifically Pierre's grandsons. They're famously private, they don't do interviews, don't post on social media, and are rarely photographed. But they run one of the most powerful luxury brands in the world. Yes, it's all one company, and they don't sell shares, and they don't answer to any outside investors. This level of private ownership is super rare. Most luxury brands today are owned by giant conglomerates like LVMH or Kering. Let me break it down to you. So, Louis Vuitton, Dior, Fendi, owned by LVMH, it's public company. Gucci, Balenciaga, Bottega Veneta, owned by Kering, public company. Prada is publicly listed. Hermes, public but tightly controlled by the family. Chanel is an exception, similar only to Hermes in terms of independence, though Hermes still trades publicly. But let me take you deeper into Chanel business and explain why people pay as much as they do for the items. When people say that fashion is art, they're right, because of the way it's treated, executed, stored, and highly intertwined with history and fantasy. But why does Chanel put the price tag that they do? They own some of the oldest artisan houses with archives that are unmatched. They store physical creations like tweed samples, flowers, jewelry, and leather. They store techniques and teach their workers for years sometimes, and they create materials that are used for the final products. While Chanel owns these artisans' ateliers, they are not the only ones using their work. Some of these artisan ateliers were found by Coco, some were brought during the Karl Lagerfeld era. Artisan house number 1. For bottoms, ornaments, jewelry, accessories, it was founded in 1929 and acquired by Chanel in 1955. La Mer is another artisan house owned by Chanel. They mostly do feathers and pleating. They were founded in 1980 and acquired by Chanel in 1996. Maison Michel. They do hats and headpieces. It was founded in 1936 and acquired by Chanel in 1997. Next we have Lesage. They do embroidery and tweed weaving. They were founded in 1924 and acquired by Chanel in 2002. Next is Massaro. So they are making Chanel shoes. Because this artisan house does shoes for Chanel, the brand is able to provide like any shoe size to the models, so models are perfectly comfortable during the fashion show. And acquired by Chanel in 2002. Guzan Jewelry and Goldsmithing for Chanel, they were founded in 1950 and acquired by Chanel in 2005. They have another artisan house that does fabric flowers and floral crowns. It was founded in 1969 and acquired by Chanel in 2006. Cos Gantier are making gloves for Chanel. Karl Lagerfeld famously wore their gloves, founded in 1892 and acquired by Chanel in 2012. Barry does knitwear for Chanel and they were founded in 1970s, acquired by Chanel in 2012. So when you buy Chanel, you're paying for the fashion shows, the photo shoots, the archives, the craftsmanship, the artisan heritage, and unique materials. Does it work? Well, in 2023, Chanel reported $19.7 billion in annual revenue, putting them in the same weight class as Louis Vuitton. The number includes perfume, bags, makeup, skincare, clothes, and it's growing globally, especially in the US and Asia. Interested in how they market? Well, they don't, at least not in a traditional sense. No sales like 50% off deals, no constant influencer drops, no trend chasing, very curated social media, full control over distribution. They invest in iconic runway shows, long-term celebrity relationships, and mythology, not TikTok trends. The vibe is clear: class, wealth, and exclusivity. Coco Chanel made the name, and the Verheimers turned it into an empire. But what is a brand without the designer? Yes, nothing. So we're gonna talk about the clothes finally. I did cover some things that Coco did herself, but let's be honest, as a nosy girl, I mostly talked about her personal life and way too little about fashion. So let me tell you, Coco Chanel was that girl who invented quiet luxury before it was even a thing. She was born into the world where women were wearing puffy skirts, huge layered dresses, hats with everything on everything, corsets, everything was covered in flowers and covers. She was looking at them like an outsider. She was getting glimpses of a better better life, and clothes are usually part of the fantasy. She brought the idea of comfort to women's clothes. She branded the idea of the little black dress. Obviously, the visuals have changed with time, but the wording and the association with Chanel are still here. Moreover, this phrase is known and associated by your parents, by your grandparents, by your friends. Not many brands have this kind of recognition across the globe, through generations, and across genders. She's a woman who made black clothes for women chic, elegant, cool, classy, not just for mourning. In 1926, Vogue called her simple black dress Chanel Sport, like the car, because it was simple, accessible, and revolutionary. She gave us tweed suits inspired by menswear and British countryside fashion. Her suits had boxy jackets, gold buttons, raw edges, soft but structured. They were meant for movement and comfort. She truly cared about practicality. She made stripe prints high fashion too, another example of how she took inspiration from men's clothes and turned it into luxury. Fun overlooked detail, she had a thing for leopard print. I adore leopard print. She used it in her collections in the 30s, and one of her mansions had a pink bathroom with leopard accents, which is funny considering how she looked down on Schiaparelli. Let's talk accessories. Before Chanel, real jewels meant status, like full stop. But Chanel said, it's not the diamonds, it's the attitude. Honestly, so true. I mean, so many things in this world are about attitude and confidence. She mixed faux pearls, gold chains, glass stones, made it chic to combine fake and real, which kind of aligns with the way she told the story of her life, you know. But don't let her fool you. When she gained wealth, she had a thing for real stones. She owned diamonds, designed with them. She loved Verdura jewelry, especially their cuffs, which became part of her personal style and the brand. She once claimed she didn't like diamonds, said they were too flashy. But in 1932, she designed Bijou de Diamant, her only high jewelry collection during her lifetime. It featured celestial motifs like stars, comets, constellations, showing clear inspiration from space. The diamond bow choker was part of this collection, alongside other bow pieces. This was a groundbreaking moment for fashion meets high jewelry. You think I'm done? I'm not. She changed bags forever. Like before her, you had only clutches, no straps. You couldn't carry your bag over your shoulder. Obviously, like a male bag existed, but it wasn't fashion. Then in 1955, she designed the 2.55 quilted handbag. It had a gold chain strap, quilted leather, burgundy lining, and it was the first bag meant to be worn over the shoulder. And then the two-tone shoes, 1957. Beige body, black toe cap made your legs look longer and your feet look smaller. It's smart, but it's usually said that she just hated like people with big feet. I don't know how true is this, but it's what I've heard, so I'm telling you this. I've already touched on this earlier, but let's talk about the uniqueness of Chanel No. 5. I don't really love the smell personally, but my grandma does. It was the first abstract perfume, a blend of over 80 ingredients, mixing natural and synthetic notes. She broke tradition by naming it after a number, not a flower. Chanel said 5 was her lucky number, and the version she picked was literally the 5th sample. I personally believe that it was like her favorite number. She was also known for starting the shows on the 5th of the month, a rule Chanel still follows. And over 100 years later, it's still the best-selling perfume in the world. Of course, I need to mention the red lips, one of the Chanel staples in makeup. She didn't invent the red stick, obviously, but she made it a huge part of her branding. And she gave women this new philosophy: luxury must be comfortable, otherwise it's not luxury. So, quite a legacy, huh? Now you'd think it would be a struggle to find a replacement for her after she died. And you'd be right. For 12 years after her death, there was no single strong creative director. The in-house team produced collections under the Chanel name, but they weren't groundbreaking. Critics found them outdated and reliant on Coco's legacy. Sales declined. The perfumes, accessories, and cosmetics thriving because that's where the money was, well, still is. But the Verheimers wanted to revive the fashion side because that's what builds the image, the story, the desire for the brand. So they decided to compete with the wave of rising designers. And they brought in Karl Lagerfeld, who had already made a name for himself at Chloé and Fendi, to reinvent Chanel. And listen, did they make the right call? Well, I think yes. I know that Karl Lagerfeld wasn't a nice person, nor was Chanel for that matter, but his collections at Chanel, well, I adore this. I have a TikTok about his 90s era at Chanel that still gets likes 2 years later, because it was timeless and it was iconic. I know I sound dramatic, and it's kind of sad that I'm praising the man more than the woman, especially when she started it all, But let's be honest, the 90s fashion is closer to me than the styles of the 20s or 50s. I do admire Coco's fashion legacy, but Karl made it relatable to me and I think to general public as well. He once supposedly said Chanel would have hated what he's doing, and I think yes, but I chose another quote for you. My job is not to do what Coco did. My job is to do what she would have done now. He modernized her legacy without erasing it. Coco created the codes and Karl played with them. He reimagined her staples. Tweed suits, pearls, black and white, camellias, chains, kilted bags, number 5 through a new lens. Tweed became sexy, crop jackets, mini skirts, chain belts. The double C logo was everywhere. Bikini, boots, bomber jackets. Lagerfeld shocked everyone with his fashion shows. A Chanel supermarket, a fake airport, a protest march, an iceberg, a rocket launch, a beach with actual sands and waves. He turned the Grand Palais into an art installation every season. This gave Chanel press and visibility. Every show became a moment. He made Chanel a global giant, especially in the Middle East and Asia. He pushed the brand into celebrity culture, partnered with Rihanna, Keira Knightley, Kristen Stewart. He turned ready-to-wear into commercial machine. Before him, it was mostly haute couture and perfume. He made it wearable, sort of. I mean, it's still luxury, obviously, but it's closer. He made Chanel girl a thing, young, rebellious, elegant. Think Claudia Schiffer, Cara Delevingne, Lily Rose Depp, Kristen Stewart, Jennie from Blackpink. He made the little black dress sexy, bold, sculptural, experimenting with sheer fabrics, draping, embellishment. He tried to blur gender lines. I'll talk about this later, but he started teasing menswear. Chanel still doesn't have a full menswear line, but Karl set that trajectory. He told stories with his collection. Snow queens, Egyptian goddesses, astronauts, cowgirls, clothes were part of the fantasy, rich in details, emotion, and drama. But Karl passed, so who came next? From 2019 to 2024, Virginie Viard was a creative director. She worked with Karl behind the scenes for over 30 years. Karl said that they were always together or always on the phone. Her vision was more quiet, more intimate, more feminine, less spectacle and more variability, less fantasy, more real life, romantic and useful, ruffled dresses, light fabrics, tulle, lace, soft pinks and florals. I low-key feel like Chanel would have hated it, but I think it's fine. I mean, you can't be doing the same thing forever. Times go on and you have to do something new. I like what she did. Virginie made Chanel more useful, more real, with careful attentions to textures and the person wearing it. Her Chanel had a girly face, which I love. She wasn't trying to compete with Karl's drama, she was trying to dress a real woman, but she stepped away. The Chanel Spring-Summer 2025 collection was designed by the Chanel Design Studio, and it was cute, by the way. For now, Bruno Pavlovsky is handling the executive side, but changes are coming. They announced their new creative director in December 2024, and Matthew Blasi officially assumed the role in April 2025. We expect to see his first collections this fall at Paris Fashion Week, and I can't wait. He is known to work closely with artisans, which aligns perfectly with Chanel, and I think he may bring menswear to the brand. Just to give you a sense of his work, before Chanel, he built up a strong resume. He interned at Balenciaga and John Galliano. From 2007 to 2011, he worked for Raf Simons as designer on the Raf Simons main line. Then he joined Maison Martin Margiela's artisan line from 2011 to 2014, working uncredited on the artisanal and couture collections. Yes, he's the one who made those masks for Kanye West. From 2014 to 2016, he worked for Dior under Raf Simons again as a senior designer for women's ready-to-wear. From 2016 to 2018, he was senior designer at Celine. Then from 2018 to 2020, he joined Calvin Klein as senior designer. From 2020 to 2023, he worked at Bottega Veneta and the clothes were gorgeous. He was creative director of women's wear. I do notice he changes workplaces often, so I'm curious if he stays at Chanel for long and what he's going to bring. That's it for today's episode of Random Talks with Ira. Thanks for hanging out with me and letting me ramble about all things Chanel. I can't wait to release this episode and read your comments. I see you next Monday. Bye!